the no tax on tips and the no tax on overtime. Both of those were hot topics, got a lot of press, I guess I should say, and yet they're only both of them are only a deduction for from 2025. So it is retroactive back to January 1 through 2028, and then they're set to expire. Was that part of the negotiation? How did they get it to just be the 4 years?
It was all about cost.
Uh,
And so the initially, and I think we kind of alluded to this when President Trump was on the campaign trail, and he went to Las Vegas and said, "I'm going to eliminate taxes on tips." And then he went to, I think, Florida, and said, "We're not going to have taxes on Social Security," um, and I forget where it was where he made the announcement on overtime, but um, folks were kind of saying that would be so expensive and have such ramifications. It doesn't really seem realistic.
mhm.
But then you had Kamala Harris come out, I think, the next week and say, "Yeah, no taxes
Yeah.
on tips." So
Yeah.
it was very politically popular.
Right.
And so that was one of those areas when I said they started like a year early having discussions in the House. I think after President Trump got elected, there were a lot of discussions about, all right, we're still hearing this a priority from the White House. They expect us to put this in the bill. What kind of guardrails do we have? How do we put this in there? And so they put things like salary, like income thresholds and some
Yep.
other guardrails. And the main thing the House did was put this cap. We're saying it would only go through 2028 because I think the cost was just, they were working within a set numbers,
Right.
and the cost was just too much. Now the Senate took it a step further and put some additional caps on there, like no taxes on tips being capped at $25,000, and then on overtime they said 12,500 for individuals, 25,000 for joint filers,
Hmm.
and so it was trying to keep it in check, but also include that priority for the president.
Yeah,
The
this is
no tax on tips is going to be an interesting scenario as they move forward because it's so it says no tax on tipped income where tipping is customary and paid voluntarily by the customer. Yet, I mean, obviously, we'll see additional guidance come out to explain that. But I mean, just think of the restaurant business. I mean, all the businesses that now offer tips. I mean, my Uber driver, my DoorDash man, my dog groomer, all of these have um, options for tips, but making it paid voluntary, that's hard to define, or I don't know where it's going to be very gray. Well, it's gray in my head at least. Maybe we'll get guidance that makes it clear, but for me, that's going to be hard.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is, and I think you mentioned this. This is retroactive till January 1st. So
Hmm.
we get the law in 4th of July,
July.
and it goes back to January 1st, and it's going to create some, I think, interesting dynamics. I know we've been asked a lot. What do you go tell the person who either works in or owns a small restaurant? What do they do right now? I think number one, you have to kind of attack the myth that their paychecks are going to start going up, that somehow because this no tax on tips was passed, that a waiter or waitress's paycheck goes up because they'll take less
Mm,
tax. That's not true for 2025 because it's going to be a deduction taken when they file their 25 tax return.
right.
So no real change is going to happen on your week to week or paycheck. And the same is true for overtime. So the first myth that we need to debunk with our clients or the employees of those clients is don't look for an increase in your paycheck. Now, we'll talk in a minute about how you could make that happen because that's a whole different discussion. So I think that's the first thing. Then the second thing is we have to wait and see, to what Annie's point was, what is a voluntary tip? You know, uh,
Yeah.
what the Treasury is going to give us the list of industries where they consider
Industries.
tipping as customary. But if you think about how the dynamics of a restaurant works, and Dad, it's probably more true in DC than it is here in Athens, Georgia, but you walk in a restaurant, and if there's 6 of you, they tell you we're going to add an automatic 20%.
Hmm.
Is that a voluntary tip? I mean, you volunteered to come in the restaurant knowing the rules, but let's assume that they say, no, that doesn't count. Now, does the restaurant do away with that? And if they don't, then how do you get a waitress to go wait on a 6-top table where the tips are going to be taxable when there's a 5-top table sitting next to it where the tips would be tax free? How is the restaurant owners going to navigate those realities of how their business works? And a lot of that's going to depend on what the IRS says is a voluntary tip.